Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
So earlier today, a conversation was started on social media about when it's appropriate to draft a quarterback with your top overall pick. And somehow, the conversation got started. And somebody made the point that the Browns should not draft a quarterback until they have everything set up to perfectly put that quarterback into a position to where nothing can go wrong for them. And I think there are a lot of things wrong with that idea that I would like to talk about. The first thing I want to discuss with this idea, right? Get everything perfect for a quarterback. That sounds like a great way to justify never addressing the quarterback. You ever hear somebody, like, we could just take this to regular life. You ever hear somebody have or talk about all these ideas that they have, whether it be for like a YouTube channel or a podcast or, something like a business or something like they want to start. And they're always talking about these ideas, but they're never doing those ideas. And it's when you ask them, hey, why haven't you started that business you told me about? Why haven't you, started that YouTube channel or started that podcast? And they always come back with some reasoning about how they don't have the perfect stuff and everything's not perfect yet. And that's why they haven't started. And that's what this conversation feels like to me. It feels like people wanting to justify their procrastination of moving the Browns quarterback conversation forward. That's what it feels like to me, because none of this makes sense from any kind of logical standpoint. The idea that you need to wait for everything to be perfect to take a quarterback, well, that's just never how that's worked, right? The quarterbacks usually go in the first 3 picks of the draft if they're worth anything. And the teams that are picking in the first 3 slots are usually the teams that have a lot to fix, but want to build around a quarterback for the next 5 years. We all know this to be true. I don't know why people are arguing as if this is a legitimate point with legitimate things around it, when that's not what people are even trying to make the argument of. They're trying to make the argument in favor of procrastination. Is what it is, right? It's when your friend tells you that they're going to get their life together, and then you're like, okay, you could get started tomorrow, and then they give you a million reasons why they don't want to get their life together starting tomorrow because everything's not perfect. It's when somebody tells you that you're going to go on a diet, and then you check in with them a week later, and you're like, hey, why do I see a bunch of McDonald's bags in your house? And they're like, well, I was going to go on a diet, but then I thought about it. Thanksgiving's coming up, and it's going to be hard to maintain a diet during Thanksgiving. So I just rather not start so I don't disappoint myself, right? It's the constant procrastination of something that you have to do, but maybe you're hoping you don't have to do it right now. That's what this conversation screams to me. It's not about what's better for the Browns. It's more about procrastinating the task of solving the quarterback problem, because that's the problem that the Browns have to solve sooner than later. And that's the problem that the Browns are in position to solve sooner than later. If you need me to further break down why these excuses make no sense and should not stop the Browns from drafting a quarterback if they deem a quarterback worthy of the pick in this upcoming draft, you can continue to listen after I thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. I want to talk about the phrase "a quarterback away" because I think this phrase is kind of, I'm searching for the proper word. My mind wants to go to misnomer. But the phrase "a quarterback away" in my mind is kind of a trap because it refers to a state of a team that is in such a state that theoretically you think all you need to be good is to have a quarterback, right? And when I say this, the kind of teams that come to mind are maybe the Philadelphia Eagles, right? I think people think of the Philadelphia Eagles. But really what people are thinking of are quarterback-proof teams, right? When somebody says we shouldn't take a quarterback unless we're a quarterback away, they're really talking about a quarterback-proof team, a quarterback-proof roster, a roster that can compete without a quarterback. And that inherently has a couple of gaps in that logic, right? One, if you're truly a team that's a quarterback away, are you going to lose enough games to get the kind of draft selection that will be required to add the quarterback that you need? I feel like that's the biggest hole in that theory. Let's say the Browns play this out, right? In 2026, they don't take a quarterback. They pass on Moore and Mendoza, not because they don't think they're going to be good quarterbacks, but because they don't feel like they're ready yet. And the Browns build up the team around the quarterback position. And they get a better offensive line so the one game can thrive. They get better wide receivers so the floor could be lowered for quarterback. They improve the defense. They get a better coach so the schemes are more fresh, all of that stuff. Do you think that that team's going to be bad enough to pick in the top 5 to go get a quarterback in 2027? No. That team's probably either going to make the playoffs as a wild card or just miss the playoffs and be picking in 19 or 20. And then you end up in the same situation that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been in, where they have needed to move on to a new long-term situation at quarterback, but haven't had the draft assets to allow them to make a selection that they would feel good about to move on long-term at the quarterback position. So there is the disconnect right there, right? By making yourself a team that is just a quarterback away and theoretically in a perfect position to bring a quarterback in, you're also making yourself a team that is much less likely to get a quarterback. I don't know about you, but me personally, I would rather draft the quarterback that I think could be really good and then build around that quarterback to the point to where the team can get really good around the quarterback. Now, I know a lot of people are worried about ruining a quarterback, right? That's the main thing people jump to. Well, Quincy, if you draft the quarterback and your team's not ready for that quarterback, you can ruin them. Well, one, if you're drafting a quarterback in the top 5, it is because you believe that they're the kind of prospect that can handle a couple of things going wrong, right? The prospects that you would draft in the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, they come with caveats where you do want that to be a better built situation in order for them to thrive. But the kind of prospect that you take early, you hope can withstand some things not being perfect upon their arrival, and you understand will get the reps that they need because they are an early draft selection to be able to work through anything that happens early in their career. Like ruining a quarterback only really happens if you neglect the help around the quarterback for like 4 or 5 years. But if your plan is to draft a quarterback, use some draft assets to help that quarterback, and continue to use your draft assets to help that quarterback, then you should be in a good place in a couple of years. That quarterback's not going to be ruined because of that. So that doesn't really feel like a valid fear. And if we look at the teams that have taken a quarterback in the top 3 of the draft since 2020, you can see this play itself out, right? The New England Patriots, who at the point to where they drafted Drake May, had the 29th ranked pass blocking and had the 28th ranked wide receiver room. They also have fired a coach already during Drake May's career, even though he's only been in the league for 2 years, and they had a shitty offensive line. Well, they spent a first-round pick in 2025 on Will Campbell, a third-round pick in 2024 on a guard, a first-round pick on a center, and then they signed Morgan Moses in free agency. And in just 2 years, that offensive line was fixed to the point to where the Patriots could thrive. Could you ruin a guy if you leave him out there with no offensive line for like 3-4 years? Yeah. But why in the world would that be your plan, right? Jaden Daniels, another guy who went to a bad situation in Washington. They weren't a winning team. He gets there. They get to the NFC Conference Championship game. Caleb Williams, who didn't go to the worst situation in the world because it wasn't the Bears' natural pick. I think the Bears were like 7-10 the year that they brought in Caleb Williams, but certainly had turmoil his rookie year, had to fire a coach halfway through the season. They bring in Ben Johnson, they get some wide receivers around him, and then all of a sudden Caleb Williams looks good. Hell, Bryce Young, who went first in that 2023 draft, had a tumultuous start to his career. The Panthers were doing that thing where it looks like they're just hanging him out to dry, pulling him on and off the field, and yet today, Bryce Young is in position as a quarterback to have a really nice year and to put the Panthers in a position to possibly make the playoffs. CJ Stroud, when he got drafted with the Texans were in a horrific position. They were recovering from the post-Watson era. People thought that they were going to be terrible. I remember watching the preseason with CJ Stroud and thinking that that offensive line was going to be so bad that they would ruin CJ Stroud immediately. And it turned out that CJ Stroud was good enough that that team went to the second round of the playoffs that year, right? Trevor Lawrence, another guy who's had a ton of things go wrong in his career, but has still been able to turn up a result that's not maybe what the draft hype said it was going to be, but certainly good enough for Jacksonville to be a competitive team. They look like they might get the 1 seed this year. You got guys like Zach Wilson and Trey Lance who didn't work out, but every prospect drafted in the top 3 isn't going to work out. For what it's worth, I wasn't a fan of Zach Wilson coming out of BYU. And then you get Joe Burrow in 2020, who goes to a terrible situation in Cincinnati, almost immediately tears his ACL in his rookie year, but then comes back and makes 2 conference championship games back-to-back and almost wins a Super Bowl the year after. All of these picks who have worked out have something in common. And that something in common is that they had to work through things not being perfect at the beginning of their career. You could look at Peyton Manning, you could look at Andrew Luck, you could look at somebody like RG3, who legitimately got ruined because of injuries, right? But that was more based on the Washington Commanders' willingness to let RG3 play injured and their medical staff more than anything. But still, you look at first picks, second picks, third picks of the draft, you're going to find countless stories of teams that needed to have things be fixed while they were there. The idea that you're going to have a top 3 pick and have things perfect for that quarterback, and that's the only time that you should pick a quarterback, is ridiculous. Ironically enough, the one team on this list that you could say fits that, quarterback away mode is 2020, the 49ers, when they drafted Trey Lance. And that's probably the worst example of it not working, because in order for the 49ers to get the pick for Trey Lance, they had to trade 3 first-round picks, which highlights the other problem about that theory, right? In order to solve the first part that we talked about, where if you're a team that's a quarterback away, as most people like to say, right, a good enough team to be a quarterback away from being good, then you're going to be a team that's probably not in position to draft a quarterback. So in order to draft a quarterback, you then have to overpay to get the opportunity to take a swing on a quarterback. And that's how you can end up in the Trey Lance situation. Now, fortunately for the 49ers, because they were a legitimately good landing spot, they were able to hit on somebody that they took in the 7th round. But that goes to my second point about teams that are a quarterback away and where the Browns are. If you're a team that's like the Browns right now and you're looking for a quarterback, you need to shop at the front of the line, right? I made this analogy on Q and Cove, and this is truly how I feel about how people talk about it. People in Cleveland are addicted to shopping at discount stores for premium items on a football team. What I mean by that is we want a quarterback and we go to Big Lots for whatever reason. Like, we trying to find a quarterback at Big Lots. We're trying to get a deal here. We could get a 2-for-1 and take a guy in the second round, a late second round. Let's try to get a deal here. Or let's get a guy in the second round, or let's get a guy in the late first, or let's not get a quarterback in the first round and take somebody in the second round. We're always trying to get a deal at quarterback in Cleveland's 25-year history. And that's been the thing about the Cleveland Browns that has driven me the most crazy about how this team chooses to try to solve its biggest long-standing issue, which is the fact that they have not had a franchise quarterback since they have started this franchise back up in 1999. They are always trying to get cute about a quarterback selection. The Cleveland Browns' history, especially from 99 to about 2017, is of a franchise that will do the franchise equivalent of running an end around on a 4th and inches, right? They get too cute when it comes to quarterback. You know, you have a chance to go after a Ben Roethlisberger, but you want to be cute about it. Let's get Jeff Garcia and have him compete with Kelly Holcomb and hope that works out. Maybe we can be just good enough at quarterback, and then we could get Caleb Winslow, and that's going to fix things about the quarterback position instead of just drafting the young quarterback out of Miami of Ohio named Ben Roethlisberger. These are the mistakes that the Cleveland Browns have made throughout years of watching them. The Browns have done 2 slings in the top 5 for quarterback. We've complained for years that this franchise's biggest flaw was that when they're bad, they're not bad enough to get the top quarterbacks in the draft class. And that has been part of the reason why they have never been able to solve their quarterback problem. Well, the Browns are in a position where they can be bad enough to get the top quarterbacks in the draft class. And all of a sudden, people are telling you that they shouldn't do it. And again, I think the reason behind this, whether people want to admit it or not, is more psychological than logical, which is people want to procrastinate making a decision about quarterback because they're afraid of the Browns making a wrong decision because they've seen what can happen when you miss with Deshaun Watson or you miss with Baker Mayfield, and they're worried about that kind of outcome or getting their hopes up for that kind of outcome. But you still got to do the shit, right? If you have the idea for the YouTube channel, you got to do the YouTube channel. If you have the idea for a podcast, do the podcast. Don't sit there and wait till it's perfect, right? If you have a diet that you want to get on, don't sit here and wait till you get the perfect opportunity to start the diet. Start the fucking diet, right? Like, you just got to do it. You got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to just do it. And that's where the Cleveland Browns are with the quarterback position. Yeah, would it be nice to be able to wait and have all these hypothetical things and have it be perfect for a quarterback? Sure. But that's not the reality that we live in. The Browns are not going to have an opportunity this good to take a quarterback while also being in a nice enough situation roster-wise to guarantee that that quarterback has a high chance of success. They're going to have to draft somebody they trust can work through some problems early in their career. They have to draft somebody they trust is a good enough prospect that they will shine through despite some holes in this roster early on in their career, because that's why you take a quarterback early in the draft. Look, I don't know how much the people who have been saying this have actually looked into this year's draft class. I can only speak for the work that I have put in over the year in talking about this draft class. But if you've watched this channel, you would know that I've put in a lot of work in evaluating this draft class before the season has even ended. I've had multiple videos on this channel, not only seeking my input about this quarterback class, but other people's input about the quarterbacks class, people who are respected in their field, like JP Acosta, like Derek Bell, like Corey Kinnan, and more. I've talked about this draft class even before this season has started. We've evaluated the draft class every week during the college football season and kept track of all of them. This is something in a conversation that we've been paying attention and having all year on this channel. So me personally, I feel very confident about the work that I've done to say that I think the Browns have an opportunity to take two guys who they're going to feel comfortable using a top 5 pick on. Maybe other people aren't at that place. Maybe other people have not really studied Mendoza and more enough to be at that place. We'll see where they are in their journey by the time we get to the draft. But for me, my math is real simple. If there is a top 5 quarterback that you have the access to pick, you should take him. If you are in a selection, if you have a top 5 selection and there are no top 5 quarterbacks, I don't think you should reach for somebody outside of that. But if there's somebody you love enough to take it to top 5, you should absolutely draft them. I don't care what your roster is like. I don't care who's in your quarterback room. I don't care about any of those other factors. That's the only thing that matters. Do you think this quarterback's worth a top 5 pick? If the answer is yes, take him. If the answer is no, don't take him. This is why I did not want to take a quarterback last year, because I looked at that draft class and thought to myself, no, these quarterbacks aren't worth a top 5 pick in my opinion. This year's draft class is different. I think there are 2 quarterbacks worthy of a top 5 pick in Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza. And if the Browns have the opportunity to draft one of those, I think they should. See, me personally, I have no desire to procrastinate about this decision. Why others want to procrastinate is up to them. But that's what this is. This is just the football version of procrastination. The football version of somebody telling you that, yeah, they're going to get a job once everything gets right, right? Like this is definitely the same thing in my eyes as that, right? You ever have somebody keep telling you when they go get a job, when everything's perfect and they car working well and they can't get a job because now they got to take the bus, versus somebody who needs a job and they get a job and it doesn't matter how they have to get to that job. That's how I view life. I don't view life as you got to wait for things to be perfect in order to do them. And I think that's been a thing that's worked out for me, because I didn't wait for things to be perfect to start this YouTube channel, and it seems to have worked out, right? I just decided that I wanted to do it and that I was going to put my energy behind it, and that's what I did, and I was successful in doing that. You can't make a shot if you don't take a shot, right? And the Cleveland Browns will never solve their quarterback problem as long as they're afraid to shoot the ball. That's all I got for you. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.